According to a report in the Toronto Star, thousands of refugee claimants living in Canada haven't been fully cleared by our national security screening agencies. Today, I'm going to show you what that lack of screening really means in practice and what happens to you when you ask for a study to find out why the gaps are there in the first place. The Toronto Star is reporting on a border agency report obtained by lawyer Richard Kurland through Freedom of Information. Now, the things in this report are truly shocking. It reads, refugee claimants accounted for 41% of the overall security screening backlog, which also included screenings required for those applying for a permanent residence, international students, foreign workers, and visitors. Again, this is directly from that Toronto Star article. While official statistics showed only 0.2% of the screened asylum seekers were deemed a threat to Canada, Kurland said the fact that 11,745 were in the country and not yet assessed fully was troubling. The average wait time to complete the border agency security screening was 72 days, with the oldest case in the backlog being 857 days old, nearly 2.5 years. What we see here is that there are nearly 12,000 illegal border crossers loose in the country who haven't fully completed their security screenings. And while the government often says that these folks are initially screened right at the border, we know it takes up to 72 days on average to complete the screening process. That's over 2 months for us to figure out that the people we've already let set foot on Canadian soil are actually a security threat to us. Oh, and we know some people aren't screened at all, at least 39, according to this global news report from November of 2017. Now, that's bad for the safety and security of Canadians, but it's also terrible for the safety and security of new Canadians and refugees trying to escape terror and sexual violence at the hands of Islamic extremists. Now, a couple of weeks ago, the CBC reported that a person of quote-unquote national security concern was not only allowed to just saunter into our country, but was then granted permanent residency status due to a series of failures by the Canadian Border Agency and the Immigration Department. In this article by the wonderful Barbara Kay in the National Post, she tells the story of a Yazidi sex slave resettled in Canada who recognized the slave market boss who had owned her and abused her for months. This didn't happen in Turkey or even in Germany. This happened in Ottawa. The Canadian government had managed to resettle both of them in the same town, the capital city of the entire country, the slave trader and his victim, and we promised her safety. Then we imported her attacker to join her. And now this from a CTVW5 investigation. 5 women and one 14-year-old girl have filed reports with York Regional Police. The victims are all Yazidis who survived an ISIS-led genocide in Iraq in 2014. They have handed over to police recordings of phone calls and screen grabs of texts which reference the Islamic State and include pictures of beheadings and armed jihadis. W5 has listened to the phone calls. In one, a man laughs as he says in Arabic, "I am the man who effed you. I am your rapist." A second caller denounces Yazidis as devil worshippers, and a third caller makes a graphic reference to rape. The callers appear to have Iraqi, North African, and Gulf state accents. Which brings us to how the Liberals treat you if you find this sort of stuff appalling. Conservative immigration critic Michelle Rempel recently proposed a motion to study these gaps in security screenings that allowed a sex slave pimp human trafficker into the country to encounter his victim on our public transportation. I want to show you a Liberal MP's response to Rempel's motion to study where the Canadian government is dropping the ball. And let's be clear, Rempel isn't even calling for less immigration. She just wants to find out how slave traders and security threats are getting into Canada. Just watch.
We all want to keep the Canadians safe, and the safety and security of Canadians should not be subject to this politicking. This is not the time to spread fear and division. by scapegoating the most vulnerable. And my colleague opposite is trying to create a fear among the Canadians to be afraid of the newcomers. But the fact is that the Canadians should feel that the safety and security system is very strong, and the safety of the Canadians will never be compromised.
Oh, okay. This might actually be peak liberalism. It's now divisive if you don't want slave traders in the country. You're a racist and a fearmonger if you don't want a 14-year-old former sex slave texted images of Islamic State beheadings. That's disgusting. Now I want to show you what Rempel's response was to that liberal allegation of divisiveness and fear-mongering. I'm only going to show you some of the better parts of her response because Rempel gave that Liberal MP the business for about 4 solid minutes. If you want to see it in its entirety, go back and rewatch Monday's Immigration Committee hearing. It is worth it. Anyway, take a look at this.
The CBC wrote this article, Mr. Chair. The CBC wrote this headline: botched handling of gangster refugee claimant exposes Canada's screening weakness. So if my colleague wants to make the argument that she just made, is the CBC fear-mongering? Is that the accusation here? There is a question of policy here. We should be debating it, and trying to shut down debate by calling Canadians names, by trying to divide us based on that type of rhetoric is irresponsible and is actually what's leading to the polarization of our country. I challenge you to find one thing in that motion that says what you think it says. This is the CBC reporting this story. It is our goal as parliamentarians to hold this government to account. And I am tired of being called those names. I am. I take offense to it. And I take offense to it on behalf of every single Canadian that has these questions. They pay our salaries, Chair, to answer these questions. And voting it down, a parliamentary study to look at it, and calling us names, you called, through you, Chair, the member opposite called us a name. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to scrutinize the government's policies, the efficacy of its objectives, and taxpayer funding. If I could get an apology, that would be great. If I could get my colleague opposite to point to one thing in this motion that suggests, in this particular motion, Chair, that's in front of us, one thing that suggests what she said, great. Otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, the Liberal Party of Canada.
It's about time Conservatives started handling the Liberals like this. It is not intolerant to want to keep our country safe for everyone. For the Rebel.media, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. Hey, did you know that there's another way to get your Rebel Media fix? All of our premium shows are available as downloadable podcasts. Let's say that you are surrounded by Liberals. Just pop your earbuds in and let the conservative common sense take you away from it all. To get access to our podcast, go to therebel.media/listen or find us on any of your favorite podcast directories.